Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something that burns hotter than any argument, deeper than any old scar. You probably won't survive this story if you're looking for something tidy, because betrayal rarely leaves the floor clean. My son sold the family home. He didn't ask, didn't warn me, didn't even throw me a courtesy call while the ink was drying. You think you know loyalty when you raise someone from nothing, when you keep food on the table, when you turn the lights back on after a storm. But then one quiet afternoon you open a letter or catch a whispered rumor, and suddenly the walls you built with your own sweat aren't yours anymore. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to watch the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. That way I know you're not just here for curiosity's sake, you're here for the long nights, the hard truths, and the tangled roots of family. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's comfortably embark on tonight's journey. I'm standing in the kitchen when I first learn it. The house hums with that late afternoon quiet when the street outside is settling and the fridge motor is the loudest thing alive. There's an envelope propped against the sugar jar addressed to me but opened already with that smug little tear along the side. My son's handwriting scrawls on the sticky note, "Did this for us. For us." The audacity makes me laugh, a small, dry bark that surprises even me. The paper inside is blunt. Sale complete. Funds transferred. Signatures approved. Somewhere between lines of legal jargon, I see the word irreversible, and it feels like someone slipped a rope around my ribs and pulled hard. I should say here that in family dynamics, people often argue over kitchens and basements more than bedrooms. It's true most siblings and parents get stuck on who uses the shared spaces, not the private ones. But this isn't about a kitchen. This is about trust. He ripped the rug out from beneath me. The irony is, I taught him about contracts when he was 12. I wanted him to understand what responsibility meant. We sat at this very table signing pretend agreements about who'd wash dishes or walk the dog. He thought it was a game. I knew it was rehearsal. And now, years later, he weaponized the lesson. Here's a fringe fact in some cultures: a son selling the family estate without consent isn't just disrespectful, it's considered spiritual theft. In rural Japan, there's an old belief that the ancestral spirits live in the beams of the house, and tearing it away without a ritual is like shoving your grandparents into a storm. People still debate whether modern laws should recognize that sort of emotional property, but I'll tell you, I believe it's real. I sit down heavily on the chair. The wood groans. Funny thing about chairs, they carry every argument you've ever had, every meal you shared. This one remembers my son's first report card, his mother's laughter, before she left my lonely meals with radio static as company. And now, this chair has to hold me as I realize the ground rules have shifted. My first impulse, call him, scream until the line goes dead. But then I picture his voice, smooth and practiced, rehearsed excuses that sound like silk stretched too thin. That kind of talk makes me itch the way hotel soap makes your skin tight. Instead, I pour myself coffee, bitter, burnt at the edges, but steady. I've learned the rhythm of betrayal. The first wave is fire, the second is stone. You harden, you start to think, and thinking is my weapon. I remember the safe, not the obvious one, the hidden one, tucked behind a panel in the back closet where dust is the only guard. Inside is something my son doesn't know about, something that rewrites the rules. My will, drafted years ago when I sensed the world might turn against me. A will that doesn't give him what he thinks he already owns. But I don't run to it yet, not tonight. Tonight I sit with the ache because pain is sharper when you don't cover it. I trace the grain of the table. I let my mind wander to the smell of fresh paint when I bought this place, the sound of rain on the roof the first week we lived here. Back then, my son's hands were small, always reaching for mine. I used to think he'd grow into a man who'd protect this roof. Instead, he grew into someone who sold it out from under me. You know what's strange? Families often believe betrayal comes from outsiders, partners, strangers, neighbors. But it's usually an inside job. They're the ones who know where the cracks are, where the hidden keys sit, where the heart is softest. And when they strike, it doesn't just hurt, it rewrites your whole story. I sip my coffee lukewarm now and let the house speak. Floorboards creak like old friends shifting in their seats. The refrigerator hums steady as a heartbeat. These are the sounds I built my life around, and now they're slipping into someone else's ledger. I think about calling my sister, but she'd only remind me of what she once said, "Don't let him get too comfortable with your kindness." She was right and I was wrong. I gave him comfort like it was infinite, and he spent it like pocket change. The evening darkens. Through the window, the streetlights flicker on, throwing amber pools across the pavement. Somewhere down the block, a dog barks at nothing. I feel the night pressing in, urging me to decide rage or strategy. I choose strategy. Because this isn't over. He may think the sale ended the story, but I know something he doesn't. The will is waiting, and when the time comes, it will hit him like ice water poured on a smug grin. But for now, I let the betrayal simmer. I let it etch itself into memory, so that when I face him, I'll remember exactly how this felt. The shock, the ache, the taste of bitter coffee in a kitchen that's no longer mine. And I laugh once, sharp and humorless. Because really, who sells their parents' home for us? That's not partnership. That's theft dressed up as love. The next morning feels like someone has swapped my lungs with gravel. I wake up in a room that looks the same as yesterday. Same curtains, same framed photo of my son in his high school cap and gown, but nothing feels steady anymore. It's the cruel trick of betrayal. The walls stay the same, but the floor tilts just enough to make you stumble. He comes by around 10. No call, no text, just the scrape of keys in the lock like it's still his right. He strolls in with a grin that doesn't touch his eyes. That's the thing about fake smiles. They stop about half an inch too short, like they're afraid of commitment. He plops down on the couch like he owns the place, which technically I guess he thinks he does. "Morning," he says, and it sounds like an apology hiding behind a sales pitch. I don't answer right away. I want him to sit in the silence, feel the air press against his chest. Silence is heavy when you know you're guilty. I pour myself tea instead of coffee this time, trying to calm the heat boiling in me. Funny fact, in family arguments, researchers say the pause is more dangerous than the yelling. Yelling burns quick, but a pause. That's where people decide whether to forgive or detonate. "You opened my mail," I finally say. My voice is flat. I'm not giving him the storm he wants to ride out. I'm giving him the ice that doesn't melt. He shrugs. "It was important. I didn't want you to be blindsided. This is for the best, Dad. For the best." That phrase is poison wrapped in sugar. People say it before they gut you. I laugh low and sharp. The best for who? He launches into a speech about investments, how the market's up, how the house was a burden, how this frees me. He gestures with his hands like he's pitching me a timeshare. Every sentence sounds rehearsed, like he practiced in the mirror with that salesman smile. I almost expect him to pull out a whiteboard. Here's a strange little cultural footnote for you. In Victorian England, a son couldn't legally sell a family property unless the father was declared insane or incapacitated. It was a safeguard, a kind of leash. Now you just need a few signatures and a lawyer who doesn't ask questions. People still debate whether modern systems have made families freer or just more fragile. I let him talk, let him drown himself in his own logic. Then I cut in softly. "You sold your mother's roses, too. That stops him." He stares, mouth still half open. He forgot that roses are roots, not just petals. His mother planted them the spring before she left. Red ones, stubborn ones that clawed through soil like they had something to prove. Every summer they bloomed like a reminder of her laughter, echoing across the porch. And he sold them for square footage. The smile flickers, then returns stretched thinner this time. "Dad, you're holding on to memories. We need to think forward." There it is, that line. Forward. As if the past is a bag of trash you leave on the curb. But the past is what makes the walls stand, what makes a chair more than wood, what makes roses more than thorns. "You're forgetting something," I murmur. My hand brushes against the table, tracing the worn grooves. He thinks I mean sentiment, but I mean paperwork. I mean the will sleeping like a snake in the dark. He sighs, leans back, spreads his arms across the couch. He thinks he's the adult, now the one in control. He thinks I'm the frail old man who should be grateful someone's taking care of business. That smile of his, it's a mask, and masks always crack under heat. I let him stew. I talk about tea leaves instead, how some families read them for fortune, swirling the dregs at the bottom of the cup. He frowns confused. I hide a smile behind the rim of my mug, because what I see in the leaves isn't fortune, it's a reckoning. Here's a fact about family loyalty. Psychologists say it runs deeper than friendship, but it cuts harsher too. Betrayal by a stranger leaves a scar. Betrayal by family, that leaves a crater. He starts fiddling with his phone, scrolling like he's got better places to be. I watch his thumb flick over the screen, fast and careless like every choice he makes. He doesn't realize I'm memorizing this moment. The false grin, the restless thumb, the casual theft of everything I hold sacred. Finally, I say, "You didn't even ask." He looks up defensive. "You would have said no." That's the thing about sons. They mistake their parents' no for weakness, when sometimes it's just wisdom trying to shield them from the storm. I stand slowly, letting my joints pop like gunfire. He thinks it's weakness, but it's just noise. "Get out," I tell him, and my voice is low, calm, the way thunder sounds right before lightning hits. He tries another smile, softer this time, like he's negotiating. "Dad out." He goes eventually with that grin, frozen and brittle. The door clicks shut. I breathe again. Later, I walk the garden. The roses are still there, stubborn and tangled, as if they know they've been sold but refuse to wilt. I touch one and the thorn nicks my finger just enough to remind me pain has roots too. There's an old custom in parts of Eastern Europe when a son betrays a father, neighbors hang black cloth over the gate as a warning. We don't do that here, but I feel the urge. Instead, I let the house wear its own warning, the silence, the empty rooms, the invisible crack in the air. Night comes again, and I sit with a notebook. I write his name slowly, carefully, the way you write on a gravestone. I whisper to myself, he thinks he's won. He thinks selling walls erases foundations. But I know better, because in the closet behind the panel, the will waits, and when it speaks, his grin will break. People still debate whether revenge is justice or just another kind of cruelty. But I'm not aiming for revenge. I'm aiming for truth. And sometimes truth is colder than revenge ever could be. I close the notebook. The house groans in its sleep, and I whisper to no one. But the night, he doesn't know what's coming. The third day, strangers arrive. Not strangers exactly. Buyers' couples with clipboards, wide eyes, and that eager gleam you only see when people believe they're about to own a dream. I don't remember agreeing to an open house. But the realtor's car pulls up at 9 sharp, and suddenly my driveway is littered with shoes I don't recognize. I stand in the corner of the living room like a ghost in my own skin, watching them run their hands across the banister I sanded myself 30 years ago. One man tests the strength of the window latches, clicking them shut like he's measuring the worth of my security. A woman whispers to her husband about tearing out the kitchen wall for more light. I almost laugh. That wall is weight-bearing. You can't just rip out history and expect the roof to float. Funny thing about family homes, sociologists say they're less about location and more about memory density. A small house where 10 birthdays were celebrated often feels bigger than a mansion with no history. I watch these strangers nod approvingly at the square footage, oblivious to the laughter baked into the plaster. One couple steps into the dining room and marvels at the hardwood floors. They don't know I installed them with bloody knuckles after my wife walked out. Each nail I hammered was a way to keep from screaming. Those planks still echo with her absence. And now, a stranger just called them charming. I slip upstairs away from the noise into my son's old room. Dust lies thick across the shelves where his trophies used to stand. The bed is still pressed low in the middle from all the nights he sprawled there with headphones blaring. On the wall, faint outlines where posters once hung sticky tape ghosts of rock bands and athletes he swore he'd become. And I think this is what he sold. Not just square footage, but a childhood preserved like amber. Here's something strange. In some inheritance traditions, rooms are given names that must remain intact: the mother's room, the children's room. Even if walls collapse, their names are recorded in family ledgers. People still debate whether that's superstition or psychology, but I know one thing: a room without a name is just drywall. My son sold the names too. Downstairs, someone laughs. The realtor's voice floats up smooth and honeyed, promising renovations and resale value. It stings because I can tell my son learned his false charm from people like that, those who smile too widely while taking everything away. I wander back to my room, shut the door, and sit on the bed. For a moment, I consider confronting them all, shouting, "This house isn't for sale." But it is. On paper and ink, my son's signatures have already shouted louder than I ever could. Instead, I close my eyes and listen. The buyers shuffle from room to room, doors opening and closing like exclamation points. I remember when those same doors opened for birthday parties, sleepovers, late-night confessions. Every creak has a memory, and every memory is a ghost no realtor can banish. I let myself drift into one, my son's 10th birthday balloons taped along the stair rail cake, too sweet with candles that dripped wax onto the tablecloth. He laughed so hard that day cheeks sticky with frosting. His friends chased each other through the hall until the dog barked in protest. I sat right here, content watching him glow under the light of love. That same boy sold this house. The laughter still echoes, but now it's muffled by contracts and strangers' footsteps. By late afternoon, the buyers trickle out one by one, murmuring about inspections and offers. The realtor leaves last, promising good news soon. The house exhales into silence as if relieved to see them go. I wander into the kitchen. The fridge hums steady. A glass of water sweats on the counter left by one of the visitors. I pour it out in the sink like it's contaminated, because it is. Their fingerprints, their plans, their hunger, it all feels like contamination. I glance at the roses through the kitchen window. They're still stubbornly blooming even under the October sun. My son forgot that roots don't sign contracts. Roots cling, roots resist. And so do I. Here's a fact about family disagreements. Psychologists note that they're rarely about the stated issue. The house isn't just the house, it's power, respect, identity. A father saying you can't and a son saying I already did. The surface is property, the core is pride. That night I wander room by room like I'm inventorying ghosts. In the hallway I touch the grooves on the wall where we measured my son's height year after year. Faded pencil lines climbing upward until they stopped. He stopped when he thought he was too old for rituals. In the bathroom, the mirror still shows faint scratches from the time he dropped his razor and swore he'd grow a beard to prove he was a man. He never did. I pause at the attic door. The string dangles dusty. I pull it climb up into the stale air. Boxes crowd the corners, Christmas lights, winter coats, photo albums. I sit cross-legged in the dust flipping through one album. My wife smiling in the garden, my son in a superhero costume, me holding him on my shoulders. The photos are yellowing, curling at the edges, but the faces still glow. And I think no one buying this house will know these people ever lived here. In some cultures, before a house is sold, families perform a ritual farewell, burning incense, chanting blessings, even burying small objects under the doorstep so the house remembers. We don't do that here. We just sign papers and pretend memory doesn't matter. People still debate whether rituals are silly or sacred. Me, I think forgetting is the real foolishness. I put the album back and close the attic. Downstairs, I lock every door, check every window. I know it's futile. The sale is done. But rituals matter, even small ones. Even just locking doors one more time before they belong to someone else. Lying in bed, I imagine the strangers repainting walls, tearing out carpets, filling rooms with their noise. The thought makes my chest ache. Because while they'll be making a home, I'll be losing one. But I remind myself I'm not powerless. Not yet. My son doesn't know what sleeps behind the closet panel. The will, the testament, the snake waiting to strike. And that thought, quiet, steady, lulls me to sleep. Morning sunlight spills across the kitchen table, and for a brief second, I almost forget. Then I see the stack of envelopes, official crisp with seals that smell of ink and cold steel. Legal documents, paper that feels heavier than it should, like it carries not just words, but the weight of betrayal. I slide the stack closer. My son left them here, probably thinking I'd skim them, shrug, and accept my fate. But I don't skim. I read every line, every clause, letting the language scrape at me like sandpaper. There it is. His name, not mine. his signature sprawled across deeds and authorizations, the date fresh and merciless. My home transferred into another's possession. I press my thumb against the ink, half expecting it to smudge. It doesn't. Permanent. Here's the thing about family finances: experts say money fights are the top predictor of estrangement between parents and adult children. It's not politics, not parenting disagreements, it's always money. And here it is in black and white, tearing through our bond like scissors through fabric. The lawyer's wording stings most. Irrevocable transaction. Sole authority. Grantor consents. But the grantor isn't me. It's my son. My own child played landlord with my life. I let out a laugh, short, bitter. Paperwork has a smell, you know. Dry chemical, almost metallic. But this stack smells like fire, like ash. As if the second I turn my back, it'll crumble into dust. I remember when he was 13, begging me to co-sign for a school trip he couldn't afford. He promised he'd pay me back with his allowance. Of course he never did. But I signed anyway because that's what parents do. That's how it starts, little signatures, small debts. Until one day the paper trail circles back and swallows you whole. Here's a fringe detail for you. In medieval France, some families had a law called la réserve héréditaire, meaning part of the inheritance could never be sold or given away. It was reserved for heirs untouchable. People still debate whether modern property laws should adopt something similar to keep families from losing everything to one reckless hand. Reading these papers, I find myself wishing for medieval rules. At least then, my son's pen wouldn't have been enough to burn down my history. I turn the pages slower now, forcing myself to face every sentence. My chest tightens when I see clauses about fixtures and chattel's legal language for everything inside. Furniture, photographs, even the squeaky banister I fixed a dozen times. All part of the deal. Sold like a bundle of yard sale junk. A memory cuts in sharp as glass. The night my son came home, late, 17 years old. Face pale, shirt torn from some fight he wouldn't explain. He collapsed into this very chair, the same one now itemized as dining furniture. I patched him up with a trembling hand, and for a moment he looked at me with gratitude so raw it almost hurt. That moment is gone now, packed into a clause, carried off in the slipstream of commerce. I press the documents flat with my palm. The paper feels cool and different. I whisper, "Not yet, 'cause there's something he doesn't know. The will, my will, tucked away in its dusty cave. If you've ever studied family law, you know wills can be sharper than swords. They can bypass transactions, redirect wealth, unravel victories. My son thinks he sold permanence, but the will can turn permanence into sand. I sip cold tea, the bitterness grounding me. My hands don't shake, anger has steadied them. I almost wish they would shake so I could excuse myself as frail as old. But no, I am steady. Too steady. That's scarier. I grab a pen and start copying sections into a notebook. Word by word, I etch them down like carving on stone tablets, because I want to remember the exact language when the time comes. When I show him that his false triumph isn't a fortress, but a tent in the wind. Here's a fact about open wounds in families. Psychologists note they rarely heal through apology alone. They need acknowledgement restitution, something that tips the scales back to balance. Otherwise, the wound festers and people carry it like a secret limp. I don't want a limp. I want balance. By noon, my eyes ache from reading, but I keep going. Buried in the back of the packet, there's an addendum. My son authorized future renovations pending approval by purchaser, which means he's not just sold the house. He's handed the power to tear it apart brick by brick to strangers. I slam the papers shut. The sound echoes like a gunshot. Somewhere, the fridge hums nervously, as if it too knows something terrible has been set in motion. I picture him at the realtor's office, smiling that practiced grin, convincing them he's in control. That smile doesn't reach his eyes. I know I saw it yesterday. It's a mask stretched thin, but it's enough to fool outsiders. He thinks it fooled me, too. I pace the kitchen, feet scuffing against tile worn smooth by decades. My mind jumps to a story I once read in rural Mexico. Families bury copies of their property deeds under the foundation stones, believing that paper tied to soil cannot be taken. People still debate if that's superstition or savvy, but in this moment, I wish I'd buried mine too. Instead, I buried the will, or hid it rather. That secret testament is my buried stone, and soon enough he'll learn what wait truly means. Evening settles heavy. The light through the windows looks dusty as though the house itself is tired. I set the documents aside, stacked neatly, but their presence lingers like smoke. I whisper to the walls, he thinks it's over. The silence swallows my words, but I know the house hears me. Houses always hear. I sit again at the table, tracing its surface with my fingertip. A small gouge interrupts the smoothness from the time my son carved his initials when he was 9. He swore it wasn't him, even as the evidence spelled his name. That's him in a nutshell, leaving scars and smiling like they don't exist. But scars do exist. They speak louder than excuses, and when the will comes to light, my son will finally hear them. The night after the paperwork storm, I sit in the living room with the lamps off the whole house lit only by the faint orange glow of the streetlights seeping through the blinds. It feels like the house itself has gone quiet, waiting for my move. I don't reach for the documents again. I've memorized enough of them already. Instead, I turn my mind to the one piece of paper my son doesn't know exists: the hidden will. I rise slowly, joints aching like rusty hinges, and shuffle down the hallway. The carpet fibers whisper under my feet, familiar as the sound of my own breathing. At the end of the hall is the closet, innocent enough with its coats and umbrellas, its forgotten boxes. But behind the back panel, tucked into the dark like a secret heartbeat, lies the testament I wrote years ago. I push aside the coats, the dust falling in little clouds. My hand finds the loose board. It gives under pressure just enough to reveal the hollow space. I reach inside and touch the envelope. Thick paper, waxy seal. The weight of it is strange, heavier than documents should be, as though every word inside carries an iron chain. When I pull it out, my fingers tingle. My will. My last word, my last laugh. He thinks he owns everything but this. This is the iron hook buried in the soft flesh of his victory. You know, inheritance laws are a maze. In some countries like Germany, a parent can't legally cut a child out of their will completely. A mandatory portion is always reserved. But here, the laws are looser. I can leave the house to a cat if I want to. People still debate whether that's fair, whether family deserves inheritance by default, or whether it should always be earned. My son never thought about that. He assumed blood meant guarantee. I break the seal carefully. The pages are still crisp. I wrote this will after a different betrayal when his mother left, and I saw how quickly loyalties could change. I told myself then, never assume permanence, not even in family. I start reading. The words are blunt. The house and all assets are not to be passed directly to my son. Instead, they are placed into a trust with conditions. He must prove responsibility, must show care, must protect the property, not sell it. And if he fails, the assets shift. They move sideways toward my sister, toward distant relatives, even toward charity, anywhere but his greedy hands. I laugh softly, almost like a prayer, because it means his little triumph, the smug grin, the smooth talk, the papers waved in my face, is hollow. He doesn't realize he's sold smoke. I tuck the will back into its cave. I'm not ready to unleash it yet. Timing matters. Timing is the hammer that makes truth ring like a bell. Back in the living room, I pour myself another cup of tea. I think about my son, the way his false smile flickered when I mentioned his mother's roses. That was my first glimpse of a crack. And soon, the will is going to split it wide open. Here's a fact about family secrets. Psychologists say they often feel heavier to the one keeping them than to the ones unaware. But this secret feels like armor to me. Like finally I've got something sharp enough to cut through his lies. I lean back, sip slowly, and let my mind wander. Funny enough, this isn't the first secret I've hidden from him. Years ago, I kept the truth about his mother's departure quiet. She didn't just leave because of differences. She left because she saw something in him, a hunger, a selfish streak she couldn't stomach. I defended him then, said he was just young, just confused. Now I wonder if she saw the future more clearly than I did. The will is proof that somewhere deep down I saw it too. I didn't trust him fully, not enough to give him everything outright. Some part of me knew he might one day trade love for leverage, family for profit. I remember an old ritual I once read about in rural India. Before writing a will, elders would walk the perimeter of their land 3 times, whispering the names of those they loved most. It was a way to bind love into law, to make sure property carried memory, not just money. People still debate whether rituals can hold power over legal ink, but sitting here, I almost wish I'd done that walk. Maybe then my son would have felt the weight of every step before lifting a pen against me. The clock ticks past midnight. The house is restless, sighing with old pipes and shifting wood. I whisper to the dark, "He doesn't know. He doesn't know." And for the first time since this nightmare began, I feel lighter. Because betrayal may be sharp, but foresight is sharper. The next morning, I watch him pull up in his car, flashy and loud, as if he's already rich from his theft. He walks in with that same smile, teeth, bright eyes, dull. He talks about buyers lining up, about offers coming soon. He's spinning his lies like silk. But all I hear is the buzzing of a fly caught in its own web. I nod, let him boast. Inside, I'm steady, because every word he speaks is a castle built on sand, and the tide is coming. When he finally leaves, I return to the closet, open the panel, and press my hand against the will again, just to feel its presence, just to remind myself he may think he sold my life, but he didn't. Because my life, my love, my story, it's written here in ink he's never seen. And when the time comes, that secret will burn brighter than his false grin ever could. The dinner was supposed to be peace. My son invited me. Well invited is too generous. He announced it like a doctor announcing bad news. "We'll all sit down," he said, "clear the air." He even chose the restaurant, one of those places with dim lighting, cloth napkins folded into swans, and waiters who glide like shadows. It smelled faintly of lemon oil and ambition. I arrived early out of habit. That's something about family dynamics. They say the oldest person in the family usually arrives first at gatherings, not because they're eager, but because they've learned to survive in the silence before the storm. And storms always come. The table was long round at the ends. My son sat near the head, grinning like a politician. He wore a suit jacket I didn't recognize. Across from him, my sister adjusted her earrings, eyes darting between us, like she already regretted showing up. A couple of cousins joined 2 distant relatives who smelled opportunity, not reconciliation. That's the thing about family feuds, they attract spectators. Everyone wants to know who bleeds first. He raised his glass. "To new beginnings," he said. I stared at the wine shimmering in my own glass. New beginnings. It tasted sour already. The conversation started polite. Cousin number 1 praised the menu. Cousin number 2 asked about traffic. My sister commented on the daycare, but underneath tension simmered. You could smell it like gas leaking quietly from a stove. Finally, he leaned forward, elbows on the table, that salesman's smile flashing. "Dad, I know it was a shock, but selling the house was the right move. Everyone here agrees." He gestured around like a magician unveiling his trick. My sister flinched. I never said she started, but he cut her off. "Come on, it's obvious. The house was too much. Too old, too heavy for you." He looked at me like I was a piece of furniture about to be retired. "This is a fresh start." I set my glass down carefully. The stem trembled under my fingers. "You sold memories, not wood." He chuckled a cruel little sound. "Memories don't pay bills." That laugh, sharp hollow, echoed inside me. Remember that cruel laugh in the hotel lobby? This one was worse because it was aimed directly at my chest. Here's a fringe fact: in some cultures, family meals aren't just meals. They're contracts. In ancient Rome, agreements sealed over dinner carried as much weight as signatures. People still debate whether meals strengthen or destroy families, but sitting here, I knew this dinner was a battlefield. My sister cleared her throat. "You could have asked him first," she said softly. Her voice wavered, but the truth landed like a knife between us. His smile faltered. Asking would have meant waiting, and waiting costs money. Cousin number one jumped in. "Look, property markets," I cut him off. "This isn't about property. This is about betrayal." The word hung in the air, heavy as a hammer. Plates clinked nervously as waiters delivered food no one wanted. He leaned back, arms wide, pretending calm. "Dad, you're being dramatic. I did this for us." I laughed, then loud enough that nearby tables glanced over. "You keep saying us, but every time your mouth moves, I hear me." Silence. Even the waiters froze. Then my sister spoke again, firmer now. "You know there's a will." His eyes snapped to her sharp as glass. "What will?" She glanced at me, then looked away. She hadn't meant to reveal it, not yet, but the words were loose now, rattling across the table like dice. I smiled, slow, deliberate. "The one you forgot to ask about?" He blinked, smile twitching at the edges. "You're bluffing." "Maybe." I sipped my wine. "Maybe not." That was the first crack. His mask slipped just a fraction, but enough for me to see the fear flicker underneath. Here's a fact about family dinners. Psychologists say arguments around the table often repeat the same patterns for decades, the same insults, the same roles. Tonight, I wasn't just a father. I was the mirror he couldn't bear to face. The food cooled untouched. Cousins whispered excuses, mumbling about early mornings. One by one, they slipped away, leaving only me, my son, and my sister. He leaned forward, voice low now. "If you're serious, if there really is a will, you're making a mistake." I tilted my head. Or maybe I made the smartest choice of my life. He pushed his chair back abruptly, metal legs screeching across tile. He tossed money on the table for the bill, though it wasn't enough. His false grin returned stiff as plaster. "You'll regret this," he said. I didn't answer. I let him walk away, shoulders tight, footsteps too loud. My sister touched my hand briefly. Her palm was cold. "You're really gonna do it," she whispered. I nodded. "He thinks betrayal is final. I'm gonna show him it's just the beginning." We sat in silence a while longer, two survivors in the wreckage of what was once a family meal. On the drive home, I thought about traditions again. In some villages in Greece, when families fight publicly, neighbors place bread outside their doors as a symbol, "Let peace return." No one left bread for us tonight, only crumbs of resentment. Back at the house, I stood in the doorway, breathing in its familiar smell, wood polish dust, faint traces of cooking that never quite fade. I thought of all the dinners we'd had here, the arguments, the laughter, the silence after his mother left. The family table cracked tonight, but the house still stood. For now. I locked the door and whispered to the dark, "He doesn't know what's coming, but soon he will." Because betrayal may start at the table, but reckoning always finishes in the will. Morning arrives with a hush that feels staged, like the street took a breath and forgot to exhale. I step onto the porch with my mug, and the neighborhood turns its head a fraction, the way birds do when something shiny falls. Word travels faster than delivery scooters around here. The house is sold. The father is furious. The son is smiling like a billboard that forgot what it's selling. Across the street, the couple who power walk at sunrise slow down to perform a near-theatrical stretch. They bend, they hold, they glance. The stretch lasts exactly as long as it takes to gather a rumor. At the corner, the old man with the terracotta planters fusses with his soil that doesn't need fussing. He keeps glancing at my roses as if thorns can confess. The neighbor kids ride their bikes in geometric loops, then circle me, then pretend the circle was accidental. The neighborhood has entered witness mode. I sip and let the quiet do its work. People think gossip is loud, but it's actually the softest thing on earth. It seeps, and then it's in your walls. I can almost hear it under the paint. The father got duped, the son got clever, the realtor got paid. Somewhere a kettle whistles and even the steam sounds nosy. Here's a straight family fact to pin to the corkboard: most household conflicts never happen in a vacuum. They expand to fit the container, and around here, the container includes porches, sidewalks, and the grocery store freezer aisle where people hover by the peas to trade intel. Families aren't islands. They're small countries with loose borders and very enthusiastic journalists. Out by the curb, I deadhead a rose just to give my hands something to do. The bloom drops not dramatically, just honest. It reminds me of that dinner, the way the table lost its appetite before anyone lifted a fork. Remember that cruel laugh in the hotel lobby? The restaurant version was its cousin, glossy, brittle, and sharp enough to nick you when you least expect it. My son perfected that sound, the noise a grin makes when it forgets how to mean anything. I hear footsteps and turn. It's Marisol from 3 doors down, carrying a casserole so hot it fogs the lid. She's the neighborhood's emergency response team in human form. She pretends she just made too much, which is the neighborly way of saying, "I brought you supplies for the emotional hurricane I know you're in." The dish smells like kindness and cumin. I take it, thank her, and we stand together for a minute while the porch absorbs the weight of unasked questions. She doesn't pry. She just tells me about her basil that bolted and the dog that learned to open the screen door, and somehow, in the middle of basil and dogs, I feel my shoulders loosen. Support doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives disguised as a family recipe with foil edges folded twice. When she leaves, she pats my forearm and says nothing that requires an answer. That gesture is the opposite of the realtor's smile. It reaches the eyes and keeps going. I go back inside and place the casserole on the counter like a truce. The kitchen greets me with its familiar hum. I swear the fridge has become my co-therapist, always present, a little cold but committed. I crack a joke to myself that I should start billing it by the hour and instantly feel slightly better, which is proof that humor is the duct tape of the soul. If I could bubble wrap my heart with bad one-liners, I would. By mid-morning, the street has warmed into chatter. Someone posts on the neighborhood group about changes coming to the old Davenport place, which is funny because there's no Davenport here, only my name and the groan of these floors when it rains. A few houses down, I catch snippets. Renovations, property values, a hedge that has looked tired for years. The hedge hears this and bristles. I whisper an apology to the shrub. We've both been called tired lately. Here's a fringe thing I read once in a village in Sardinia. When a house changes hands, the neighbors hang small bells on the new doorstep, so every visitor has to ring them and greet the house aloud. It's meant to ward off secrecy. People still debate whether such rituals protect communities or just decorate them, but I like the idea that the first sound a house hears after a sale is a hello, not a sledgehammer. Speaking of sledgehammers, a truck noses up to the curb around noon, the kind with a logo that promises transformation in 6 weeks. Everyone knows those 6 weeks last as long as an inconvenient memory. 2 workers step out, walk the perimeter, and talk about load-bearing beams like they're discussing chess moves. I have the sudden absurd urge to offer them lemonade and then quietly replace it with cement. Joke 2, Imagined Crime Edition. I behave. A text pings my sister. She's checking in, keeping her sentences short, letting spaces breathe. We both learned at that dinner that silence is a better weapon than a fork. I type that I'm fine, which is partially true. I am as fine as a weather vane in a storm, upright, spinning, informative. She reminds me to rest and to drink water as if grief is a fever you can flush. I don't correct her. Sometimes being told to hydrate is the closest thing to being held. Afternoon slides toward that peculiar hush that comes when the mailman has already passed and hope for good news has been postponed by 24 hours. I step out again and there's the old man with the planters still poking around his soil. He shuffles over and starts talking about pruning seasons, but this isn't a horticulture lesson. It's the neighborhood code for I'm here if you need to talk. He mentions how his own son moved away without warning years back, how the house sounded different for months, like it was chewing on stones. I tell him my house is doing the same. We nod at each other like fence posts in a wind. Inside, I open the closet, slide the panel, and touch the envelope. I don't take it out. Just a hand on a heartbeat, making sure it's still there. The will hums in the dark like a power line. That secret is the only thing in my life right now that doesn't require explanation. The house seems to feel it too. Floorboards relax, doors settle. The living room knows its lines in this play. Here's another family pattern the experts point out when a household crisis goes public: roles harden. The fixer fixes the avoider, avoids the storyteller, starts narrating. I know my role. I'm the one who narrates. I smooth the edges with words until they stop slicing me open. That's what I'm doing right now, talking to you, stroking the grain of this story. So the splinters lay down. At dusk, the power walkers return slower this time, as if fatigue has finally caught them, or gossip has been fully digested. A child shrieks with joy somewhere, the pure squeal of a new trick learned. The sound cuts through my chest like clean air. Life, despite paperwork that smells like fire, insists on practicing cartwheels. I let out a laugh that is not cruel or defensive. It's small and true, like striking a match in a cave. I make dinner simple and eat standing up, rebellious against the table that remembers too much. Fork, bite, breathe. I think about that terrible grin my son wore at the restaurant and wonder who taught him to polish it so bright. Maybe I did in some sideways way, teaching him how to survive a hard world with a mask that fits too well. People still debate whether parents give their children tools or weapons. Maybe tools become weapons when wielded without care. That's a question I can't answer tonight. After dishes, I step onto the porch one more time. The streetlights flicker into amber pools and the neighborhood finally exhales. Windows glow. Televisions murmur. A dog's collar jingles like a tiny Sardinian bell. I picture for one reckless moment, standing in the middle of the street and announcing the truth. The will is a storm front, the sale is not the end, the house remembers, and so do I. Instead, I run a third light joke through my head about charging admission for the neighborhood opera currently playing on my lawn. I spare them the ticket booth. I go back inside. I lock the door. Ritual, ritual, ritual. I murmur goodnight to the roses, the fridge, the attic full of faces that won't be in any real estate brochure. I sit and I breathe and I let the whispers roll off the siding like rain. Shame loosens its grip, replaced by a strange liberation when the worst has been said out loud by everyone else. You're free to say nothing and do exactly what needs doing. Tomorrow, I visit the lawyer. Tonight, I keep the secret warm. The neighbors can keep their chorus. I'm conducting a quieter piece, strings held in a single note, steady as a pulse. The downbeat arrives soon. The lawyer's office smells like polished wood and quiet ambition. It always does. I sit in the waiting area watching a clock that ticks too softly, the kind of sound that seems to judge you for being impatient. The receptionist offers water in a paper cup. I take it not because I'm thirsty, but because ritual demands you accept small kindnesses in sterile places. When my name is called, I walk into the office like I'm walking into confession. My lawyer, gray hair, sharp glasses, voice like gravel dragged across marble gestures for me to sit. He doesn't waste time. I heard about the sale, he says. No condolences, no small talk, just the fact laid bare. I still have the will, I reply. My voice doesn't tremble, though part of me expects it to. He nods once. Then you still have leverage. Leverage. That's what this is boiled down. Not memory, not roses, not pencil marks on the hallway wall. Leverage. The kind of word that turns family into paperwork and blood into contracts. I hate the word, but I need it now. He slides a folder across the desk. Inside, copies of my will, notarized, sealed binding. My son's name appears, but not where he thinks it does. Not in the owner's seat, not in the throne. He's mentioned yes, but as a condition, a clause, a responsibility. Not a king, just a tenant of my design. Here's a fact about inheritance. In most states, wills override property transfers after death. It's the last word, the trump card. A house sold in life can be undone in death if the fine print is sharp enough. People still debate whether that's moral, whether the dead should reach back into the living's affairs. But law doesn't debate. It just enforces. The lawyer taps the document. If you die with this in place, his sale will collapse. The buyer will find themselves owning a ghost. Your son will face lawsuits, debts, maybe worse. I let that sink in. A strange calm washes over me, like finally finding the exit in a maze. He thinks he's cornered me, but the truth is, waiting, crouched like a lion patient. I don't want to ruin him, I say quietly. I want him to understand. The lawyer raises an eyebrow. Sometimes those are the same thing. We go through the details, trust conditions, beneficiaries, clauses sharp as knives. each one a reminder he doesn't hold all the cards. I do. I always did. Here's a fringe detail in ancient China. Elders sometimes wrote wills in poetry, hiding instructions in verses about rivers and harvests. The family had to decipher the meaning, a test of loyalty and wit. People still debate whether those wills protected families or destroyed them. I wonder if I've done something similar, hiding meaning in legalese my son will never understand until it's too late. When the meeting ends, I step back into the daylight. The city hums around me, traffic, snarling pigeons, strutting strangers, brushing past without care. And yet, I feel taller, lighter, like I've pulled a stone from my chest and set it down in that office. On the way home, I stop at a cafe. The barista is young, cheerful, oblivious to the weight of wills and betrayals. He asks how my day is. I almost laugh. Complicated, I say. He smiles anyway, and for a second, I envy his simplicity. Back at the house, I slide the panel open again, tuck the updated will into its hiding place. The dust welcomes it back like an old friend. I press the wood shut and lean against it. The house seems to exhale. The walls creak. Less. The air feels thicker, steadier. Maybe I'm imagining it, but I think the house knows. It knows the fight isn't over. That evening, I sit on the porch again. Neighbors glance, whisper, shuffle past. Let them. Gossip is smoke. It curls, it fades. Truth is stone. It waits. My son calls around 9. His voice is slick, too cheerful. Dad, offers are coming in. We might be looking at a record sale. I don't tell him about the will, not yet. I just listen humming at the right times, letting him believe his empire is intact. His laugh crackles through the receiver, brittle as glass. When he hangs up, I whisper to the night, "You don't know what's in the dark, son, but you will." Here's a fact family conflict experts say most power struggles aren't really about money or property. They're about control, about who gets the final word. He thinks he has it. He doesn't. The roses outside rustle in the breeze. Their thorns catch the moonlight, sharp and silver. I take it as a sign. Some things defend themselves quietly. Some things wait until they're touched before they draw blood. I smile the kind of smile that does reach the eyes, because I know what's coming. And soon, so will he. The night before the house changes hands for good, I walk the halls like a watchman on his last shift. Each step creaks not with complaint, but with memory. Floorboards don't really protest, they just remind you of all the weight they've carried. My footsteps mingle with ghosts, my boy chasing a ball down the corridor, his mother humming as she carried laundry, me stumbling half asleep when work shifts left me hollow. The rooms are empty now. Furniture gone, walls, bare windows, echoing every sound. You'd think emptiness would make a house quieter, but it doesn't. It amplifies. Every cough, every sigh, every shuffle bounces back louder, as if the house is determined to remind you it's still alive. In the living room, I trace the outline on the carpet where the couch used to sit. The carpet fibers are darker there, protected from the sun. Funny how absence leaves marks deeper than presence. Sociologists once wrote that most family homes can be mapped not by their architecture, but by the worn spots. The grooves on the banister, the sink with the permanent drip, the corner that smells faintly of dog long after the dog is gone. They're right. My house is a map, and I know every path. I move into the kitchen. The fridge hums, still faithful even in its last night of service to me. The hum feels like a heartbeat, steady, resigned. I place a hand against the door and thank it. Yes, I thank the fridge. Humor me. I've had fewer companions more loyal. Joke number 1 for the night, at least the fridge never sold me out. I pour myself water, let it run longer than needed, listening to the pipes rattle. Even they sound sad. There's an odd ritual I read about once families in parts of South America run water through every faucet of a house on the last night before leaving, so the house knows thirst is quenched. People still debate whether it's superstition or gratitude. I like to think it's both. I let the water run until steam fogs the window, then shut it off. Upstairs, I pause at my son's old room, empty now but still carrying the faint musk of sneakers and restless youth. I run a hand along the wall where his posters once clung, feel the rough patches of tape residue. I remember his laughter at midnight, his angry stomps when I said no, his muffled cries the first time someone broke his heart. And then a darker memory, the hollow in my chest when I realized he could lie to me with ease. Remember that cruel laugh in the hotel lobby? The seed was planted right here in this room when he practiced smiling after betrayal. I sit on the floor, back against the wall, staring at nothing. For a moment, I almost pity him. Selling the house isn't just betrayal, it's desperation. Maybe he's been carrying debts. Maybe he wants to prove himself. People still debate whether betrayal is born from malice or fear. I don't know. All I know is he didn't ask. He didn't trust me enough to face me. I pull out my notebook and start writing. Not the will that's already locked tight in its hiding place. This is different. These are rehearsals. Words I'll say when the time comes when his mask shatters under the weight of truth. I write slowly, deliberately, letting the ink steady my hand. My script is calm, not angry. Anger burns too fast. Calmness cuts deeper. By midnight, the house feels restless. Windows rattle against the wind. Doors sigh in their frames. It's as if the walls themselves are rehearsing too, preparing to echo me tomorrow. I walk one last circuit, touching the banister, the doorknobs, the cool tiles. Saying goodbye without saying it. In the hallway, I stop at the pencil marks, the record of my son's height through the years. I run my finger along them, feeling the ridges where graphite bit into plaster. He grew taller than me eventually. I was proud. Now the lines feel like scratches on a prison wall counting down to escape. Here's a fringe fact in some Native American traditions. Families leave a lock of hair hidden in the home they abandon, so part of their spirit remains. People still debate if it's loss or continuity. I don't have hair to spare anymore, but I get the instinct. Part of me wants to leave something behind to tether myself here. I end the night in my bedroom. The bed feels foreign, now stripped of sheets, just a frame and mattress. I lie down anyway, staring at the ceiling. I think about all the nights I fell asleep to rain on the roof, or to the creak of my wife slipping in late from work, or to the hum of a fan when the heat refused to die. I think about the nights I stayed awake, worrying about bills, or waiting for my son to come home, or listening for burglars that never came. And now tonight, the last night, I lie awake rehearsing. Not burglars, not bills. Just the moment tomorrow when I open the panel, take out the will, and let the truth crash down on him. Here's a fact about endings. Psychologists say people rarely mourn the thing itself. They mourn the version of themselves tied to it. I'm not just losing a house. I'm losing the man who believed loyalty was permanent, who thought raising a son guaranteed respect. That man ends tonight. I close my eyes, let the house hum around me one last time. Tomorrow, the performance begins. Tomorrow, my son learns the difference between ownership and inheritance, between victory and illusion. I whisper into the dark sleep well house. Tomorrow, you wake as something else. The morning of the reveal arrives sharper than broken glass. The air tastes metallic, like a storm threatening but never delivering. I rise before dawn not because I want to, but because sleep refused me. My body feels older than it did yesterday. Betrayal adds years overnight. The house is silent, stripped bare. No curtains to mute the sunlight. No photos to soften the walls. No furniture to catch a sigh. Just me, the boards, and the echo of everything we were. Today is the day my son will learn that his victory is a mirage. I take the will out from behind the closet panel, the envelope steady in my hands. It doesn't tremble, though my chest does. It feels heavier than stone, heavier than betrayal itself. I press it flat on the kitchen table, the same table he sold, the same table that remembers birthday cakes, arguments, and spilled coffee. Irony is a cruel companion. By noon, he arrives. He doesn't knock. He doesn't think he needs to anymore. He walks in with that familiar grin, bright and hollow, carrying the posture of a man who believes the world is his stage. Dad, he says, voice dripping with cheer, big day. Papers are final, buyers are thrilled. We did it, That word again, the word that tastes like vinegar in my mouth. I don't answer. I slide the envelope across the table instead. He glances at it confused, still smiling. "What's this, your education?" I say softly. He tears it open, impatient. Pages unfold crisp and merciless. His eyes scan, darting left to right, lips moving silently. The grin falters. It twitches, stiffens, collapses. His face shifts through stages, confusion, disbelief, denial, until finally landing on anger. This isn't legal," he stammers. "Oh, it's very legal," I reply. My voice is calm, steady, almost kind. Drafted years ago, updated twice, notarized, ironclad. He slams the pages on the table. The sound echoes like a gunshot in the empty kitchen. "You're saying everything goes into a trust?" I don't. "You don't inherit a dime. If you betray the trust, I cut in. If you sell the home, the assets shift. If you neglect family, they bypass you. If you act without respect, you disqualify yourself. Guess what, son? You already disqualified yourself." His mouth opens, closes. He looks like a fish gasping on dry land. For once, no smooth words come. No practiced grin saves him. Here's a fact about wills: they aren't just documents. They're stories told in law. Every clause is a sentence, every condition a judgment. Families often learn more about each other from a will than from decades of dinners. People still debate whether that's justice or cruelty. "You can't do this to me," he hisses. I lean back. "I already did. Years ago. I saw this coming." He shakes his head, fingers trembling as he clutches the papers. You didn't trust me." I laugh, soft and hollow. "And you proved me right. Remember that cruel laugh in the hotel lobby? His mask cracks now, and his laugh is gone. There's no false charm left, just raw panic. It's almost strange seeing him without it, like seeing a house, stripped of paint, bare, unfinished, unguarded. My sister walks in then. She must have timed it, waiting for this exact moment. She doesn't say a word. She just stands in the doorway, watching him unravel. Her presence is the silent witness, the confirmation that he can't twist this into another performance. "You've ruined me," he spits, finally eyes wild. "No," I correct him gently. "You ruined yourself. I just made sure the ruin landed where it belonged." He crumples the papers, then smooths them out again as if the ink might rearrange itself if he presses hard enough. It doesn't. Law doesn't bend to desperation. Here's another odd custom in some Jewish traditions. When wills are read, the heirs tear their garments, slightly symbolizing grief. Not grief for the money, but grief for the end of family as they knew it. People still debate if it's mourning or theater. Watching my son clutch these papers, I think he's mourning not me, not the house, but the illusion of control he thought he had. Silence thickens. Even the fridge hum pauses as if the house itself is listening. Finally, he whispers, "So that's it." "That's it," I answer. "You sold a house that wasn't yours to sell. You betrayed me before I was gone, and now you get nothing." His shoulders slump. The grin is dead, the mask shattered. For the first time in years, I see the boy he once was. The boy with sticky frosting on his cheeks. The boy who cried when his mother left. The boy who wanted comfort, but learned to weaponize it. He's gone, but the ghost lingers. He gathers the papers, stuffs them back into the envelope, and storms out. The door slams so hard the roses outside shiver in their stems. The house exhales. My sister steps closer, her hand on my shoulder. Neither of us speaks. There's nothing left to say. I sit at the table, staring at the empty chair he left behind. The betrayal burns less now. The truth has cooled it, turned it into something steadier resolve. Because houses can be sold, yes. But legacies, those can be rewritten, and tonight I've written mine. The house is gone now. The papers are signed. The keys exchanged, the echoes, scattered into corners where strangers will never know what lived here. And yet, as I sit with you tonight, I realize something important. A home is more than walls. A legacy is more than signatures. And a betrayal, no matter how deep, is not the final word. I want you to picture it, this quiet, empty space. The air is thick with memory, but softer, now less sharp, almost like the house itself is sighing with relief. I've carried rage for weeks, but tonight I let it loosen, let it slide off my shoulders like a heavy coat. The will, the secret, the reveal they've done their work. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just whispers, steady and cold, until the liar falls silent. And my son, he will live with the knowledge that his false victory crumbled under the weight of truth. Maybe one day he'll understand why I did it. Maybe one day he'll see that inheritance isn't about money, it's about respect, about carrying love forward without selling it for scraps. Or maybe he won't. That's his burden now, not mine. Here's something families forget. Forgiveness and finality are not the same thing. You can forgive someone and still close the door. You can love someone and still keep your will sharp enough to remind them that love isn't a blank check. People still debate whether love should come with conditions, but tonight in this quiet, I know mine does. So as I sit here, lights low, the hum of the world fading into night, I want to thank you. Thank you for listening, for staying with me through the twists and turns, through the laughter that hurt and the silence that healed. Your presence means this story isn't just my burden. It's shared, carried, transformed into something larger than betrayal. If you've made it this far, you're one of the real ones. So before you go, take a moment to breathe deep, to let your own house, whatever it looks like, wherever it stands, remind you of the weight it carries. Good night, friends. Rest well. May your walls hold only kindness and your tables only truth.